This week's retro movie review is a true cult classic, 1997's Event Horizon, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and starring Sam Neill, Laurence Fishburne, and Kathleen Quinlan. Event Horizon is a science fiction horror film. It's set in the year 2047, and it follows the crew of the Lewis and Clark, a space marine rescue unit that is sent into deep space to investigate a mysterious signal. That signal is emanating from a ship that went missing 7 years prior, and that ship is the Event Horizon. And now, for some unknown reason, it is in orbit around Neptune. In addition to the rescue team, we have Dr. William Weir, played by Neill, who was the supervising engineer of the Event Horizon. And their mission together is to make contact with the ship, search for any survivors, and return them and the ship back to Earth. However, the Event Horizon is no ordinary ship. It was designed to travel beyond the speed of light and disappeared on its maiden voyage. The biggest question is this: where has it been all these years? And soon the crew of the Lewis and Clark will get that answer, along with discovering that the Event Horizon has brought back with it an evil beyond human understanding. First, let's talk about the title, Event Horizon. If you're familiar with what that is in astrophysics terms, then it has a very ominous undertone to it. An event horizon is a theoretical boundary around a black hole beyond which no light or other radiation can escape. Basically, it's a point of no return. Now, I told you Event Horizon is a true cult classic. It was met with poor critical reviews, and it had a low box office. However, Kurt Russell, of all people, told the director later on that this film would become a cult hit and that he will be glad that he made it. Kurt Russell, great actor, and I guess now prophet. You gotta love the guy, because that is exactly what happened to this film. But before we get to it, if you could take a moment to like, subscribe, comment, and share this video out, we really appreciate it, and it helps out the channel each and every week. On an estimated budget of $60 million, the film barely topped $26 million at the box office. However, when the film was distributed on DVD and then Blu-ray, it was a surprise win for Paramount, far exceeding its sales forecast. This is even more of a great underdog story when you consider that Event Horizon was not supposed to be even put into production when it was. 1997 was the year of Titanic. James Cameron was not going to have that film ready for its summer release, pushing it to December of that year. Therefore, Paramount needed something for the summer, and this is when Paul Anderson pitched Event Horizon. Now, most of the Paramount execs thought it was going to be a darker version of Star Trek. They had no idea just how dark and gory this film was slated to be. Because of their ignorance, the film was greenlit, and it was rushed, getting only about half the normal time for filming than regular films of that era, including only getting 6 weeks of editing time instead of the industry standard of 10, which means Anderson was working 7 days a week editing the film while still in the middle of principal photography. Through all of this, Paramount was expecting a summer blockbuster. What they got has been described as Hellraiser in space. They were not happy. And after screening the film, they demanded that Anderson cut 30 more minutes from it, basically the goriest parts, and also because the MPAA slapped the dreaded NC-17 rating on Anderson's cut, and Paramount execs were horrified by what they saw on screen. But don't worry, we'll get to that in a minute. Now, with all of this editing, there has been a clamoring for Anderson to return to the film and re-edit to his original version. However, most of the footage is either lost or unusable, and it's scattered all over the globe. Anderson and his producer, Jeremy Bolt, even found lost footage stored in an abandoned Transylvania salt mine, and a lot of the footage wasn't even cataloged properly. Now, there are some lost scenes that were included in later DVD releases, but for the most part, the reality of a full director's cut is just a pipe dream at this point. Still, what we're left with is a film that has endured and maintained its place on the top 100 lists of horror fans worldwide. Hellraiser in space? Maybe. A haunted house tale on the edge of the solar system? Sure. A great example of 90s horror cinema? Absolutely. So let's take a look at it. The film opens with a pan around of the Event Horizon in deep space orbit. The interior has lost all gravity and a body cast in shadow is floating on the bridge. But this is just a dream of Dr. Weir, who wakes suddenly, spends his first few moments reminiscing about his wife, and then goes about the rest of his day, until it is revealed that he is aboard Daylight Station in low Earth orbit. And by the way, this shot of the space station above Earth took up $10 million of the $30 million special effects budget. Next, we meet the crew of the Lewis and Clark as they prepare to cut short their vacation and enter the gravity couches for extended suspended animation. There is Stark, Peters, Justin, DJ, Smith, and Captain Miller, and they're not very happy about having to cut short their shore leave and personal time. And not only are they unhappy about having to cut their shore time, they're unhappy that Dr. Weir has been added to their voyage without their knowledge. However, there's little time for explanation before the Lewis and Clark accelerates the speeds too great for humans to withstand, so the crew rushes to prepare themselves. Dr. Weir awakens early, he is ejected from his couch, and as he gathers himself, he hears a voice and goes to investigate. He makes his way to the bridge where a naked woman is sitting in the pilot's seat. He turns the chair around and sees Claire, his lost wife. A hand then grasps his shoulder from behind. He turns and sees her again. This time, she has no eyes. They've been gouged out, and he screams in terror. This is when he really wakes up, and the rest of the crew of the Lewis and Clark get back to business. They have been in suspended sleep for 54 days. Trying to be helpful, Cooper offers Dr. Weir some coffee. He refuses, and then he asks Starks if she would like something hot and black inside her too. She also refuses. Then Cooper offers her coffee. For me, Cooper's the best. Captain Miller apologizes to Peter because she's again away from her son who is crippled and having a birthday. The crew then gathers around so Dr. Weir can tell them why they're in such a dangerous part of deep space, and Dr. Weir explains that they have received a signal from the Event Horizon, to which the crew calls bullshit on. The official story is that she blew up, but Dr. Weir tells them that that was a cover story, that he is the designer of the ship, that it has warp speed capabilities because of its gravity drive engine. It was lost on its maiden voyage, but the gravity drive engaged properly. He then has to explain how the gravity drive works, by folding space and time and allowing two separate points to exist together, making it possible for a ship to travel light years in seconds. The destination of the Event Horizon was supposed to be Proxima Centauri, but something went wrong, and now they just don't know where it went or where it's been all this time. And that is the current mission of the Lewis and Clark. A few minutes later, they come into contact with the Event Horizon, floating dead in space above Neptune. As they examine the exterior with a flyby, the Lewis and Clark anchors itself to the antenna array, and I'm sure that's a decision that won't come back to haunt them later. Stark tries to scan for life readings, but all she gets back are traces of life everywhere and nowhere all at once. Captain Miller, Justin, and Peters enter the ship to look for survivors and discover everything is frozen over and there's no gravity control. Captain Miller remarks that the Event Horizon is a tomb. Peters and Miller head to the bridge and medical bay. Justin heads to the engineering section in the gravity drive. Miller discovers that the backbone of the ship connecting the forward section and the engine section is lined with explosives. They are a failsafe in case the engine fails, the ship can separate and the bridge will act like a lifeboat. Justin finds the doorway to engineering. He enters a rotating tunnel that looks like a meat grinder before coming up to the gravity drive. And here's where we should talk about the Christian iconography throughout the entire ship's design. The Event Horizon is modeled aesthetically after the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris, before it burnt down, that is. The main engines are just the steeples of the cathedral upside down. The main window of the bridge is a cross, and the meat grinder that Justin just walked through is inspired by the 9 Circles of Hell from Dante's Inferno, an Italian poem published in 1321 that tells the tale of Dante as he is escorted through hell by another poet, the Roman Virgil, until they get to the bottom and Satan himself. Finally, the gravity drive is revealed when Justin turns on the power, and it is specifically designed to mimic the description of an angel described in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 1, verses 15 to 21. Quote, "As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparkled like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel." In the actual Bible, angels don't look like typical angels. They are monstrous beings. This particular angel is sometimes referred to as Ophanim, but in actuality, besides the archangels Gabriel, Michael, and Lucifer, no other angels are given names in the Bible. Regardless of that, the gravity drive also looks like a murder machine. Stalactites and stalagmites of solid steel canvas the room, and the center of the gravity drive is some viscous black goo that Justin touches and then is pulled into. Now, while this is going on, Peters found the ship's log and last recordings, and Peters runs into a frozen corpse that looks like it was attacked by wild animals. After losing communication with Justin, Cooper jumps into action, and he pulls Justin out of the goo in the center of the gravity drive, but he is, for lack of a better term now, catatonic. However, this accident triggers a massive gravity pulse that cripples the Lewis and Clark and forces everyone onto the Event Horizon. Peters restores gravity, and Cooper tries to explain that Justin was not there and then just there, like he entered the gravity drive, which Dr. Weir completely dismisses. In addition to this, Stark reports that there is only 22 hours of oxygen left on the ship, therefore repairing the Lewis and Clark is priority number 1. And since all systems on their ship are malfunctioning now, and they crushed the antenna array when first docking with the Event Horizon, they cannot put out a distress call. And we cannot forget that we have also discovered the only remains of the crew of the Event Horizon in the form of dried and frozen blood and entrails covering the walls of the bridge. Dr. Weir attempts to explain the gravity drive to Miller one more time, but it becomes clear to us as an audience that as Dr. Weir gets close to the drive, he is being influenced by some outside force. The rest of the Lewis and Clark crew begin to have their own experiences. Peters is in the medical bay as she hears sounds coming from under a sheet, and when she pulls it back, she's confronted with the sight of her own son with his legs horribly rotting away. But it is just a vision. We next see Peter showing Miller and Weir their last clear recording of the crew of the Event Horizon, followed by massive interference. There is a voice speaking Latin, and DJ makes it out to say Liberté me, translated, save me. At that moment, the gravity drive turns itself on again and begins to fluctuate. Weir and Miller race to solve the problem, which Dr. Weir believes is a short circuit, and he enters the literal brain of the ship, but he's not alone. As he tries to fix the drive, the lights dim, we cut to Justin in the medical bay, and he also seems affected by whatever's going on, and soon, as the lights completely turn off and then back on, Dr. Weir is again confronted with the vision of Claire without her eyes, telling him to join her. He panics and exits back to the open air. At the same time, Miller is having a vision of a burning man, who we later learn is a crew member from another ship that he had to leave behind. It was either save that one man and jeopardize the whole crew, or leave him behind and save everyone else. And the shock and guilt is still apparent on his face. With all this going on, most of the crew now believes something is wrong with the ship, that it's somehow cursed or haunted. Smith even becomes enraged at Dr. Weir because he's refusing to listen, and not only to us, he's refusing to acknowledge his own experiences. But again, it is becoming obvious that Dr. Weir is not exactly himself, and we must remember, if there's something wrong with the ship in a supernatural sense, Dr. Weir is the creator of the Event Horizon, and it's safe to assume he has a special connection with the vessel that the others do not, and therefore he's being affected differently. Peters returns to the medical bay, finds Justin is now gone, and she is further tormented by strange sounds and explosions around her, and as for Dr. Weir, he appears strangely calm, serene even. Peters runs back to the bridge to be with Weir, DJ, and Stark. The bridge door is then closed, but some powerful force is pounding on it from the other side. Weir calmly states, open the door. When none comply, he attempts to do it himself, but is stopped by Stark in a most painful way. They then get an alarm and see that Justin has entered the airlock without an air suit and tells Peters that he has to do what he's doing, and she would understand if she only saw what he has seen. In the meantime, Captain Miller is working on the Lewis and Clark and propels himself towards the airlock to catch Justin as he exits into space and hopefully get him back inside before total decompression takes over. Justin's body begins to contract, his veins are popping, blood is pouring from his eyes, and then he is sucked out. But Miller was fast enough to save his life. He won't be pretty in the future, but he will be alive. After getting Justin stable and into a gravity couch, Captain Miller, Weir, and the rest of the crew convene. Weir is outnumbered now. All of them believe that getting away from the Event Horizon is the best solution. Captain Miller lets DJ know about his Burning Man vision, and what is most confusing about that is that he never told anyone about that experience before. So how could the ship know? DJ answers Captain Miller by telling him that he mistranslated the Latin that they heard. It was not save me, it was save yourself. As the repairs on the Lewis and Clark are finished up, the mysterious ship's log is cleaned up, and we get what the producers of the film call visions from hell. This very brief clip of naked men and women tearing each other to pieces and performing unspeakable acts on each other was one of the main reasons the film received an NC-17 rating, and also where most of the edits Paramount demanded were taken from. According to the producers, the scene was shot to be about 10 minutes long, and if you're gonna go all the way, then go all the way. They hired porn stars and amputees to perform in this shockingly graphic part of the film. From evisceration to violent penetration to cannibalism, this scene was inspired by 16th century Renaissance painters Hieronymus Bosch and Peter Bruegel. Remember, the studio thought they were getting Star Trek, not hell in space. So seeing that scene on the big screen for the first time must have been a real doozy for him. Now, as the crew gets ready to leave the Event Horizon, Peters and Smith gather as many CO2 scrubbers as possible to take with them. However, Peters is then distracted by the vision of a young boy climbing above the gravity drive. She follows him, believing he may be her son, but it's a trick. She does not see the open pit that she falls into, down back into the gravity drive's medieval-looking chamber, and of course she's dead from multiple blunt force traumas. Of all people, Dr. Weir finds her, and as he examines her, he has a vision himself. He's back in his pod above Earth, except now he's with Claire, but then he realizes this is the day she takes her own life. He begs her not to, but he cannot change it and has to watch her go through with it. And as he awakens from his vision, he tears out his eyes. dies. We next see Smith getting the Lewis and Clark ready for takeoff, but we also then see Dr. Weir exiting the Lewis and Clark. Captain Miller tells Smith that there's a bomb missing from the Event Horizon and that Weir must have put it on the ship. Smith goes looking everywhere for it and he can't find it in time, and the Lewis and Clark explodes, which kills Smith but also sends Cooper flying into deep space without a tether. Weir then focuses his attention on DJ, who's in the medical bay. By all accounts, Weir now possesses enhanced strength and stealth. He is completely gone at this point. He is no longer Dr. Weir, but an agent of evil on the Event Horizon. He dissects DJ and strings him up like a frog in biology class. And again, this scene was filmed in a much more graphic manner, with DJ's insides spilling out and having very up-close, detailed shots of the carnage. But Anderson was forced to cut it, and we get what we have. Still, not very pleasant to look at. Captain Miller then finds DJ hanging from the ceiling, then retrieves a rivet gun as a weapon. He heads for the bridge. He finds Stark unconscious, and while trying to revive her, Weir appears and now has the weapon. At that time, Cooper has returned. He used his oxygen supply as a propulsion device to make it back to the Event Horizon, but he's still outside the window. Weir sees him and fires, piercing the bridge window, which initiates decompression. Weir is sucked out into space. Miller and Stark make it to safety, and miraculously enough, Cooper's okay too. However, they're not yet safe. Dr. Weir, before getting sucked into space, initiated the gravity drive to return to the place it originally came from, a dimension that is the embodiment of hell, of chaos, of pain, and suffering beyond human imagination. Miller tells Cooper and Stark to go to the bridge and ready the gravity couches. He will arm the bombs and separate them from the engine. But unfortunately for Captain Miller, the ship doesn't want that, and it uses all that it can to get him into the gravity drive chamber, where the Burning Man reappears. But this man is different. He is also the hellish resurrection of Dr. Weir, who shows Miller what is in store for them when they leave that mortal dimension. Miller is beaten from one side of the room to the other. He cannot match Weir's strength, but he can trigger the bombs in the hallway and kill them both, which is exactly what he does. Cooper, DJ, and Justin use the forward section as a lifeboat, while Captain Miller and Dr. Weir are either blown up or, what is implied, the engineering section of the Event Horizon created a final black hole and entered into it to the other side. 72 days later, the remaining crew of the Lewis and Clark are rescued, but not until one last vision of Dr. Weir. After all, only one half of the ship is gone. The other half still survives. And in a way, a piece of Dr. Weir survives as well. And this is where our film ends. I hope you enjoyed this look back at one of the 90s signature sci-fi horror offerings. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Where do you rank Event Horizon in 90s horror history? And do you think they should go forward with the planned TV series based on the movie? I sure do. And remember to join us again next week when we look back at another horror classic, Night of the Living Dead. I hope you will. Remember, I'm still your reluctant gringo from south of the border. Salud and a huevo.